Hi everybody, it's Barry here again from Turning the Page, and I just want to say thank you again for tuning in or watching this, and it's really good to have you here, and so I can just share a few ideas and thoughts about mental health. I remember talking with someone, and there was just like there was no confidence in them. It was like vapor, something had gone out of them from them. It was like I was looking at an empty shell. They were there in the room with me, but there was very little confidence within them to do anything at all. It had gone. Any self-belief or confidence had seemed to have been sucked right out of them. Well, how did this happen to them? Well, they had been hammered on. That's a little term I think I've used. What does that mean? Well, it means that someone had come and with a large hammer and pounded against the very fabric of who they were. The hammer was words, things like "you're wrong," "that's stupid," "what are you doing that for?" It was loud, persistent, and kept on coming like a dripping tap. Eventually, of course, that dripping wore a little indentation out of the soft-hearted place of their soul, and the indentation became a hole. The hole became a chasm, and the chasm became like a vacuous, empty shell. And being a shell, there was a fragility and a possibility of it being completely and utterly crushed. It was soul abuse, and I have found that there is much healing and hope to be found in simply being with the other. And what that does, it kind of establishes the person as having significance. They matter, not for what they do, but for who they are. And I love this quote from Martin Buber. When two people relate to each other authentically and humanly, God is the electricity that surges between them. Oh, I love that. God is the electricity that surges between them. One of the familiar images we have in the Bible is that of broken people sitting in ashes. And I've got some references over on the website. But we find people, much like ourselves, covering themselves with ashes at times of grief, loss, and brokenness. And you have a fire, and what's left over is the ash. And as I wrote this, I was looking at a fireplace, and the fireplace has long been extinguished. The fire had long gone out, and all that was left was the remnants of what was. The heat was gone, the bulk of the wood had been consumed, and now only fragments of what was left was left behind. And I sit with the ashes of what was, and so often I wait to see what will come forth. Last night I had my very first spring strawberries for dessert. Here in New Zealand, it's springtime, and so that's a time for a lot of flowering, a lot of growth. And as I do this, you can see it's raining out there, which will make things grow even more. But I went out into the garden and I picked 6 beautiful ripe red strawberries, and I went back into the house and had them with the ice cream. Now, a few months earlier, I'd actually taken ashes out of the fire and spread them around the strawberries. You see, there's something quite useful in wood ash. It's called potassium. In fact, ash contains about 10% potassium, which is very high for any sort of natural substance that can be used as a fertilizer. And ash is also very full of trace elements. Potassium particularly is vitally important for reproduction, so for the activities of a plant to flower, set seeds, and fruit. I think ash actually contains the potency of new life. Now, I've sat in the ashes where there is burnout, depression, anxiety, confusion, loss, and confidence has gone like a vapory smoke. People suggest things to do. They make recommendations. They set out plans and prescribe what needs to happen. And at times, you just want to put them out of your mental health room, like I wrote a few posts ago. But not many people dare to sit in the ashes with them. No one often is willing to share breath over the embers and just see if something reignites. Not many people are willing to hold people in an embrace of love when they're in the ashes. I like to look and listen for the smallest of the small in the pile of ashes. Where there's a problem. How do we reignite that soul, that confidence that people have lost? There is a felt emotion of being crushed under a mountain, and that's what it can be like when you've been crushed and hammered on. You're under a mountain. And I so want to see the breath come back into the dry bones of this fellow traveller, this person who can't get out of bed, brush their teeth, or cook a simple meal. So how do I empower the soul to move? How do I breathe some life into that mountain, into that ash heap? Well, I look to the pebbles that are under the mountain. Now, we all have problems, and some of them can feel like huge mountains. It's important to understand it is a feeling, and for one person that mountain will seem inconsequential. It's a mere speck. But for one person, the person in the ashes, it can feel like a towering dark citadel of doom. They look at it and they are crushed. Any confidence vanishes. You see, feelings only report what is familiar. But under every mountain is a pebble that can be shifted. It could even be the size of a mustard seed. We find that power, that pebble, and we empower the moving of it. I simply love seeing someone list out all their problems in a very pragmatic way without any emotional attachment. We just list the problems out for what they are. Obviously, we often it's the mountains that are listed out first, the obvious problems, the big, powerful, intimidating, confidence-sapping problems. And then we break those mountain-sized problems down a bit and discover other problems, not quite so daunting, but they're still there. And under those medium-sized problem rocks will be smaller and smaller rocks until we find a pebble. And to this pebble, we begin problem solving and looking for a highly achievable solution. We create a stand plan, which is a little acronym I use for one of the little techniques I use, and we move forward. It's new. It's here that in the movement of that little pebble, that new confidence can grow. And we empower those little steps. It could be just the little steps needed to brush your teeth once a day, to get out of bed, to make a simple meal. Building a new confidence is looking for those little tiny pebble achievements, praising them, celebrating, and affirming them. And what happens in the brain is that new pathways are formed. There's a healing and repair. And out of that ash, a seed begins to germinate and puts down roots and begins to flourish through the ash of the past. Look, of course, there is still a fragility to that new emerging confidence. So we need others to continue to praise and affirm any steps that are made. Look, remember that mountains are shifted one stone at a time. Focus on the pebble in front of you, not the mountain. Hey, here's some quotes I'd like you to consider. I arise today, and this is a very old prayer of St. Patrick. I arise today through a mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through a belief in the threeness, through the confession of oneness of the Creator of creation. And I love that thought of just, I arise today out of the ashes. Dave Riddell, he says, when I believe my feelings and those feelings misrepresent reality, I'm heading for a self-referential pit that will get deeper and darker as I dig myself into homemade delusion. Another Dave Riddell is, your feelings are not a reliable guide to what you should and shouldn't do. They merely reflect a subconscious belief which may need to be examined. And this one, compassion becomes real when we recognise our shared humanity. That's P. McTrodden. And Larry Crabb, he says, real encouragement occurs when words are spoken from a heart of love to another's recognised fear. Some questions. Have you ever had a time when all confidence seemed to have disappeared? What had reignited it? 2, why do we rush to problem solve the big mountain problems rather than the pebbles? What is a pebble problem in your life that, if addressed, could ignite a new confidence in yourself? Hey, I hope you found this helpful today, and I'd encourage you to share this content with somebody else you may know who might be sitting in the ashes or who is helping people that are really struggling. And if you'd like to email me, I'd love to hear from you. It's barry@turningthepage.co.nz. And also just a big shout out to those people who regularly support what we're doing here. They maybe on Patreon or buy me a coffee or something like that. But it's vitally important that people support what I'm doing. I've got costs, and it's everything that I do is pay what you want. So it's a ministry of faith, and I believe this is what the Lord is wanting me to do. And I'm trusting that you may be able to share a few dollars and help meet my costs. Hey, but until next time, may you just keep on looking to breathing life onto people who are in the ash heap at the moment. Hey, thanks very much. We'll see you next week. Bye.